But now, they don't take no effect on me like a church song take. I can get more out of a church song than I can a blues. I've been a Christian person all my days. Before I even got 12 years old, before I even got old enough to go to the morning bench and get religion, I always been on the Lord's side. When people's in a terrible mood and they have that sad feeling, well, they want to hear church songs. They like the way them songs make them feel. Sister Anderson, what are you grumbling about back there?
See, I don't think it is evil to sing blues. You know, God will forgive for anything I do mostly. You know, that's possible. Like things that you don't do too bad, you can easily get forgiven for it. It's just like this. If you got anything in you and you want to do it and don't do it, it's a sin to not do it. If you do it a heap of times, it'll leave you. And that's the way I was about the blues. If it get with me and stay with me, sometime if I didn't sing them in 2 or 3 days, they just stay with me. Then when I'd sing, they just pass on off.
Oh boy, it's Roy. All I could manage to put on were some jeans, silk blouse, and cowboy boots. The women were dressed to the hilt. This was a big gig for them, and each gal had taken getting dressed very seriously. If you looked a bit closer, Chrissy and Lenny looked a little ragged. That's when I remembered the carnival was in town. We had an official dressing room with 6 silver stars on the door, 1 star for each woman. The guys in the band teased the women about being prima donnas and the fact that they didn't get stars, but we knew how proud they were for us. When I walked into the dressing room, I tried to look confident, or what I remembered confident looked like. Everyone was polite, which worried me. Except for Sam and Paula, no one would look me in the eye. It wasn't that I had done anything to embarrass them the night before. Sam assured me I hadn't. I was the one who was supposed to have leadership and vision. As each day passed, this was getting more difficult for them to accept. Roy's dressing room had 1 gold star on the door and was directly across from us. Nina wanted an autograph, and there was no stopping her from going over and knocking. I watched as Nina, a regally dressed autographed hound, softly knocked on the gold star door for 10 minutes. No one was answering. So Nina grabbed a metal collapsible chair, dragged it along on the linoleum floor, sat in front of Roy's door, and in a twang, sang Only the Lonely. It didn't matter, though. We all knew Roy was in there, but he wasn't answering. A lost, brave effort on Nina's part. I looked around and saw rhinestones, sequins, and jewelry. I looked plain compared to the rest. AC was eyeing me and decided to come in for a landing. Is that what you're going to wear, Lena? Yeah, I figured I should look casual, as if I do these big shows all the time. I want it to look like it's no big deal. Really, Lena, I think you've succeeded in convincing me anyway that you don't give a shit. It was over before I knew what happened. AC's words were like bricks sitting on my lap. I didn't have a chance to pick up even one and throw it. There wasn't time for any kind of a clever comeback or smart-ass look. I stood up and let the bricks fall to the floor. I had always had the ability to detach. Once something unpleasant had happened, I could put it so far back in the recesses of my brain that it would seem like the incident happened years ago. But I found I was losing that ability. My head, heart, and conscience were gradually connecting. While my head was tap dancing through mud, I had some last-minute organizing before our 45-minute set. The band would do an opening number, then each of us would have 1 tune apiece. The show would fly. We waited at the side of the stage for the introduction. We waited for the roar of applause. We were waiting for our turn. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from the state of Washington, their reputation precedes them. Please put your hands together for the women. The band began with a hump, opening with one of Marty's originals. Ooh, honey, they were greasy. I looked out and saw the crowd swaying to the greasy groove. It was the beat that throws you back to when there was no civilization, no rules, no manners, no status quo. When humans related to the beat physically, it was not an intellectual experience. The music would take you beyond what words could describe. You would have to let go. Don't worry, your cells have the memory. Your hips will tell you the truth. Get down to basics now. Get the fuck out of the way. Rely on the music. That's what it's there for, to move and feel. Welcome to rhythm and blues. Once again, the last note of Marty's song was the first note of mine. We were like a silk three-piece suit, all dressed up with somewhere to go. Slick, shiny, urbane, and slippery. We had just been greased and oiled, and we were sliding through. You came to see Roy, but you would never forget us. We ran through the standard set list. I was up first with Denise LaSalle's Rockin' Blues, It's a Real Sad Story. Paula sang Just Like a Fish, accompanied with the splits kicking her legs above her head. AC had more unloading to do. Her emotions had been boiling and had started to take on the smell of spoiled milk. Them feelings were way past their expiration date, and AC was going to pour them down the audience's drain. That girl sure did know how to take whatever was ailing her and transform it into a great performance. AC sang a ballad originally recorded by Irma Thomas called Keeper of My Heart. Lucy sang a New Orleans-sounding ditty, My Baby's Lovin', a funky showcase for the backdrop vocals, and then the group swung into It Must Be Jelly 'Cause Jam Don't Shake Like That, a song penned by William Clark. The crowd rocked with laughter. Chrissy killed them once again with Hound Dog, making sure to show off all three of her octaves. When the crowd couldn't take any more, we once again gave them AC singing a song she wrote, If You Want It, Go and Get It. A little gospel never hurt anybody, even Norwegians. We were honored with 2 encores. I was desperately trying to pay attention. I looked around, wanting to experience what was happening on stage. I felt as if a demon had placed a thick layer of gauze over my eyes. I concentrated and grabbed onto the details flying by me like wild hares, hundreds of them running across the stage, but I couldn't get my hands on one of those fucking rabbits. It was paradise on Sunday night on the banks of the river. A warm, almost tropical breeze blew just when we needed it. Here we were, opening for a big star while thousands watched. The air was sweltering with the heat of the people. The lights above were hanging on the silver steel rafters, splashing us with waves of color, colors of the musical rainbow. The lights, the crowd, and the heat of the music gave the atmosphere an intoxication without alcohol. We were in the mood, and the crowd was getting what it came for, redemption. The slithering female sex coming off the stage was like a wail, which only excited the audience. We loved ourselves, and the crowd loved us for it. The rhythms, sounds, gyrations, smells, lights, and wall of fire carried away the audience, carried them away to where they couldn't go on their own. I could see all of it. I couldn't feel any of it. Each of us had a thick layer of sweat in between our skin and stage clothes, most of which were heavy with rhinestones. The sweat felt good. It was more proof that we had worked hard, proof that we had done something worthwhile, proof this really was showbiz. Roy was going on in a half hour. None of the women or band would miss a note. The promoters allowed us to sit down in the pit right smack front in the stage. We sat patiently waiting like you would in a good restaurant anticipating a wonderful meal. None of us were budging and we barely talked. We didn't want to miss one single minute. When Roy came on stage, our chins were practically at his feet. Roy's band, his songs, and the backup singers were perfection. Roy's angelic voice gliding on top of it all was a spiritual experience. The crystal clear notes floated out of his relaxed mouth and would glide and twist their way back up to heaven where they came from. Whenever I heard him sing, it made me want to move into his neighborhood. Roy's voice could keep me warm at night. Each note poured into a sterling silver spoon, filling and emptying my soul at the same time. The music connected me to an inner sadness, a melancholy. I was having so many feelings at once, my memories of his first album and the teenage angst that went with it. The melodies I was hearing triggered an unsettled feeling about my music, how I hadn't yet found my own voice. Roy looked straight ahead. The only muscle moving was his mouth. I don't remember him saying a word to the audience. He just sang one famous song after another. So many hits. The magic of Roy was not saying anything, only his pure singing was true music heaven. All of us cried that night, standing in the pit with our arms around each other, looking up and crying. The next day, our necks would be sore. Mine and Lucy's from gazing at a different kind of star, the kind that didn't shine in the clear Montana night sky. We never did get to meet him. He was guarded like an armored truck. I'd heard he was painfully shy. Not meeting Roy was a huge disappointment. We had traveled all that way and didn't even get to shake his hand. But I guess he wasn't put on this earth to have a conversation. Roy would allow us to understand with music what words would never be able to say. He would converse, soothe, connect, and keep us warm with his beautiful singing voice. That night was over so fast. The band and the women were going out to celebrate. Chrissy and Lenny were going to the carnival. Chrissy was real excited. She was going to see for the first time her new boyfriend being shot out of the cannon. The others were pairing off and making plans. I was still reeling from the night before. For the first time in my life, I passed on a party. I had lost the directions that showed me the way back to life as I knew it. AC walked up to me and stood perfectly still. She had an unmovable look on her face. Lena, I'm sorry to do this, but I quit. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We had just done one of the biggest shows ever. What are you talking about? This show went really well. Yeah, the show was fine. I just don't want to be around your vibe anymore. You need help. We're only as strong as our weakest link, and you are real weak right now. Listen, AC, why don't you tell me what's really going on here? I can't see how this has been so bad. Thousands of people have seen you sing. You're making some extra cash in between your own gigs. I mean, what is the problem? You are the problem. I don't want to be associated with someone as unprofessional as you. Let me say it a different way. I have no desire to be led by a drunk. I had placed the knife in my chest earlier that day. Now all AC was doing was making sure she had pushed the blade in a little further. Listen, I apologized and said I would cool it. So let's just put it behind us. Jesus, at least finish the tour. If you're talking about being professional, that is the professional thing to fucking do. AC had had enough. I'm done. I've put everyone's stuff in Lenny's van and I'm leaving in the morning. You'll manage. AC did her usual spin on her heel and lumbered away. I was devastated. The embarrassment I felt was strangling me. It was finally becoming clear that my drinking was out of control and they could no longer take me seriously as a bandleader. I fought tooth and nail to keep the tears from escaping. Plus, I had such high hopes. I had imagined all of us going out afterwards and comparing our excitement, or maybe Roy himself fussing over us. I had imagined that BB or Roy would be so impressed they would want us to go out on tour with them, or maybe after the show, Mr. King or Mr. Orbison would want to sit around and talk about music. But Jesus, I briefly met BB and couldn't even get a nod from Roy. Not to mention the record we all wanted to make. Recording together was a dream we all had. Of course, when I was making a list of expectations for the tour, close to the top of that list was a record executive sitting in the audience of a big show. He would have to sign us. We were much too talented to pass up. Adding to the disappointment, we were fighting and tired, making the group feel like it was coming apart at the seams. Hell, there hadn't been any reporters interested enough to interview our group except for one local reporter. They were there for Roy, and that was that. All we had to look forward to were gigs that were nowhere as good as the ones we already played. For the group, it was all disappointing. For me, it was terribly anticlimactic. Chrissy wasn't the only one. I had some big old rockets strapped on my back, and this re-entry was particularly harsh, still catching my breath from the lack of oxygen I had cut myself off from. I went back to the room and turned on the television and watched it for a while, but it wasn't working. It wasn't filling up my head enough. There was still room for my own thoughts. All I could hear was AC's voice telling me that I was a drunk. I have no desire to be led by a drunk. I have no desire to be led by a drunk. I have no desire to be led by a drunk, over and over again. How the hell was I supposed to forget that? I laughed. The only way to forget was to get drunk. But I didn't even have the energy for drinking. I was drowning in self-pity. My head was so far up my ass I had to put a window in my stomach to see where the fuck I was going. And I wasn't going far. So what was the point? I did some mindless chores. I began with cleaning up the room. Then I packed everything I wouldn't be using. I took out the trash, and while I watched the contents of the wastebasket emptying into the dumpster, I heard somebody laugh. It was me, realizing the few moments spent on stage that evening had passed me by. My head had pounded through the set, making the show a surreal experience. For the first time in my life, I knew I couldn't recapture the moment because you have to be there in the first place. So there I was, 2 hours later, emptying the trash and realizing that being a star lasted 45 minutes. Real life, ordinary life, happened all the time. I went to bed and thought about the last 9 days. Again, I thought of Bo and how much I needed a man for the first time in my life. If there were going to be any changes, they would have to start with me. As I turned out the light, I realized I had no idea where to begin. All of us, minus AC, met for breakfast in the cafe, which was off to the side of the casino. Nobody mentioned her leaving, which made the vibe just a little thick. When the waiter wanted our order, I had considered ordering humble pie. It was an odd sensation hearing the gambling going on while eating pancakes. The group was feeling good about a job well done the night before. Even Nina was smiling, probably because she was also flirting up an electrical storm with a waiter who seemed interested. Chrissy and Lenny were comparing carnival notes, while the rest of us were making travel plans and seating arrangements. We would have lunch in Bismarck, North Dakota, and then spend the night in Miles City. To see Chrissy and Lenny so happy in the morning could mean only one of two things, money or sex. I think it was the latter. Nobody had looked me in the eye. All that could mean is that they believed that AC's quitting was my fault, that somehow I could have prevented it. When I was growing up in Detroit, I lived across the street from the Manis family. They had 10 children. Every Sunday morning, while trying to get the family together to go to church, Miss Manis would stand on the porch and start calling their names. Connie, Katie, Diane, Donna, Joni, Peter, Holly, Joy, Timmy, Scott, time for church. And when they wouldn't come, she would start all over again. After going through this ritual several times, you could hear her scream, Jesus Christ, I wish I was 10,000 other people. And that was exactly how I felt sitting at the breakfast table, waiting for someone to talk to me. I decided to speak, and Chrissy looked like safe territory. How was the carnival?
Oh man, Roger was fucking amazing. He's so brave. I couldn't believe how he climbed into the end of that rocket and boom, he was shot into the air and into a fucking net. He was amazing.
It was just a matter of time. Paula had the ball and was running with it.
Can the boy get busy? I mean, how was his personal rocket?
Lucy's throat gurgled with laughter and black coffee.
Ooh, honey, what did he do with that torpedo?
Chrissy could apply all the heat in the world, but she hated it when she was the subject.
Fuck you. I'm telling you that this guy isn't anything like the other men I've been with.
Nina was in payback mode.
That's 'cause this old boy has a job.
We laughed. The band felt more on track. They would soon forget about AC and soon forgive me. In the meantime, Lenny had the trip back all figured out. For once, I was glad someone was willing to take on responsibility. I didn't feel much like planning because I was still feeling so insecure about my last drunk. Nina seized the opportunity. She knew a weak moment when it was staring her in the face.
I was thinking that it would break up the monotony of the trip if we drove back on a different highway than usual, which means our stop for the night would be Miles City. Yeah, I'm sure that would be the best way. It's a 10-hour trip, which means we will have just about the same distance between there and Spokane. We don't have to play until the following day after arriving in Spokane, so we should feel pretty darn good.
She smiled, her I have it all under control smile. I looked up from my pancakes long enough to acknowledge her over the din of the casino sounds. No problem, it all sounds good to me. I knew my bruised ego was a temporary condition, so what the hell? Let her be in charge for a day. I needed a break. All the girls were riding with me. I couldn't think of a better way to start a new week than by leaving North Dakota. North Dakota would be a major portion of Monday's drive. Miles City wasn't too far over the Montana border. It just felt good to be headed west. I was excited about seeing Bo again. Usually, for me, out of sight meant out of mind, but not this time. I thought about calling him from Spokane to see if he still felt the same way. The scenery was more boring than I remembered it, and I remembered it being pretty damn boring. I remembered an advertisement for tourism in the motel put together by the Chamber of Commerce. Accompanying the picture on the brochure of the all-American family of 4 was the quote from the eager children, "Look, there's some big-horned sheep. Won't you stop the car and let us get out, please?" I suppose in some innocent, simple way, this was supposed to entice tourism. I was thinking how the conversation might go in my van when spotting the same thing. "What the fuck are those?" "I don't know. Looks like fucking sheep with horns on their heads." "Jesus Christ. Now that's a weird-looking animal." Well, whatever you do, don't stop the fucking van. On drives like these, I played games with myself. How many miles could I go in 10 minutes? When I would spot a sign for how far away a town was, I would go through a whole numbers game in my head. Let's see. If Miles City is 350 miles away and Podunk Anywhere is 30 minutes from here, that means once I get to Podunk Anywhere, I will only have 320 miles to go. Now, if I can do 50 miles in 1 hour, that means I will be pulling into Miles City in 6.5 hours. Not bad. I would try and entertain myself like this for hours. Pour in 5 women talking about men, a bag of pretzels, diet pop, and some pot, shaken, not stirred. It was darn right tolerable. The drive was uneventful, and the women slept for most of it. 4 hours of driving and playing my private road games. I had a compilation tape of women singers, Irma Thomas, Gladys Knight, Etta James, Lydia Pence, Tracy Nelson, Coco Taylor, Ann Peebles, and probably my favorite, Denise LaSalle. Nobody could sing like her. She put it where it was supposed to be. I knew her songs because I had been singing them for a long time. Her words described with attitude what I felt. I had the opportunity to meet Miss LaSalle once in Memphis. Denise was more interested in my handsome date than in me, but I didn't care. My date took the picture of her and I standing together, me looking at Denise, Denise looking at him. The women would rustle around every once in a while, discovering new ways to get comfortable in a van. My mind was drifting. I was thinking of my mother when she was in her 40s and how different her lifestyle was than mine. She was a housewife and cleaned our upper flat every day. There I was, crawling around in vans and moving equipment, driving from town to town. We had a different perspective on life. My body was beginning to feel the abuse. I'd always treated my physical body like I had been accidentally stuffed into it, rather than like it was part of me. The human condition seemed like an expulsion from paradise. Lurking beneath my bruised skin were dark experiences full of aloneness and mortality. It was that condition I was trying to escape through my fantasy life, creative work, or the arms of another. I never wanted to be a separate individual. I wanted to be free of all burdens and cares. Maybe those tendencies gave me a bigger picture of the larger whole, but it sure did make everyday life fucking miserable. Signs for Bismarck were beginning to appear, and there was no chance of that making me feel better.
Do I ever lose faith in the Lord? Never, never. Because He's been good to me. He's been good to me. I have never had to take a drink. My prayers was enough for me. Them prayers keep me from ever having to do anything that the devil wants me to do.
See, that's the 2 different things about it in singing the blues. You take a drink, then you sing the blues. And then, you're trying to get your feelings over to the next person through the blues. And that's what makes it sin. But on a spirituality kick, you never take a drink to say your prayers.
Part 3. The Blues. Moving, primping, gossiping, yelling, eating, and drinking. We were in Syntex country. If you needed gas, you stopped at Syntex. I inquired about a good place to eat, and the hurried attendant recommended Peacock Alley. The restaurant was located in the Patterson Hotel. I was starving and thirsty, but I was avoiding the latter. Diet Pop would have to do until I got to Spokane. We pulled into the big log cabin-style building. The lettering on the front was in gold and turquoise. Peacock Alley, don't forget to try our famous peacock pie. Weren't peacocks an endangered species? There was a big round table in the middle of the room with enough seating for the 9 of us. I hated sitting in the middle of the room. I felt like I had to sit up straight when slumping was my favorite position. There were little peacocks on the curtains, the tablecloths, the frilly tied seat covers, and the menus. Welcome to Peacock Alley. A warm and friendly voice was attached to our welcome. I looked up and saw the name Lynn on her name tag etched in white. All the waitresses wear them now. The gold-plated ones were a thing of the past. While greeting us, Lynn was handing out huge laminated menus with bright pictures of peacocks on the outside and the food we were about to eat on the inside. I'd love some Diet Pop, whatever you got. She made even more friendly eye contact. Is Pepsi okay? Yeah, that will be fine. So there you go. I could make decisions. I looked out the window and wondered why people live where they do. Why Bismarck, for instance? Lots of people like weather change, and I do get that. I like it too. Actually, I'm fascinated with weather. Going so far as to watch the Weather Channel as if it has a plot. I knew it was 80 degrees below zero the previous winter, and the time we had just spent in North Dakota, it was over 100 degrees. 180 degrees difference. Now that was a season change. No doubt about it. Yeah, you betcha. That's just a little too severe for me. While looking at the menu, I realized I required sugar. If my body wasn't going to get it through alcohol, strawberry pie looked good to me. The pictures of the strawberries were real pretty on the menu, so I ordered some. AC would have joined me. I wonder if they had Kit Kat pie. Nina was purring about how cute the waiter was that morning.
He had such a sexy look to him, you know? Don't you think?
This was directed to all the women at the table. I didn't think anyone had given him a single thought until Nina asked about it. It took a while for us to form our opinions, and Nina was getting irritated while she was waiting for someone to agree with her. She had a sexual fantasy forming in her mind and needed us to help keep it going, even if it was for just a few more minutes. Paula knew Nina well. She got into it.
Oh, he was a doll, girlfriend. Must have been hard to walk away from that. It looked like he really liked you, too. What bad timing with us having to leave right away.
Nina's fur was being petted in the right direction. She started to purr.
I know. I hated to leave so soon, you know? After making the connection.
Chrissy was less compromising.
I don't know. I don't think he was that fucking hot. He was too innocent looking. Too fucking young. Not my type.
Nina ignored her. No one was popping this bubble. I could feel it. It was my turn. I better say something or get the cold shoulder treatment again. He was cute, Nina. Maybe you could write him or something. It was the best I could do. She was giving my idea some thought. I didn't dare tell her I wasn't serious. Hell, she'd been smiling for almost a day now. The mile markers seemed much farther apart on the open highway. When you are home, you measure a mile by 12 city blocks. In North Dakota, the blocks were measured by and for Norwegian giants. We drove about an hour before anyone took the customary nap. Our conversation was flat like the land we were passing through. Same as the Norwegians, when spicing up their descriptions of the land, they usually described it as something like a flat, fertile eastern entryway to the Red River Valley. Yeah, and instead of a janitor, you are a custodial technician. It works, I guess. What you bring to it is what you get out of it. Gossip was our fallback position when we didn't have anything important to say. That afternoon, we had targeted Roy's backup singers. I'm telling you what, honey, those girls look like something out of the disco period with their hair all poofed up, and honey, all them sequins on their clothes. Well, they looked countrified. We all agreed. The group that Roy carried with him did look like they were straight out of Nashville. The country music capital at the time, it was a very separate world from the rest of the musical community. The country music industry is cliquish, but wants acceptance from the other forms of music. They are always real proud when one of their artists cross over it onto the pop charts. But not too often now. We don't want you to forget where you come from, you hear? The backup singers didn't have a name. That was good. We could make up one. The Orbettes. The Orbettes might not have looked like they stepped off the pages of Vogue, but they sure could sing those pretty real high, only the dogs can hear 'em notes. We were no fashion statements ourselves, and high notes were a thing of the past. They were something we had before whiskey and cigarettes and singing without monitors in front of real loud bands stole them away. But none of this was the point. We just needed to gossip, and the Orbettes were good enough. The gossip had put us into a mood of camaraderie, and along with a night off, having a couple of drinks sounded good to the group. I had my sights on the billboard signs announcing possibilities. A place not suitable to take the family. That's what we were looking for. Looking for signs in between Bismarck and Miles City was easy since the drive is beyond boring. Seeing a patch of trees would have been an event for my eyes. If there ever had been any trees in North Dakota, they were cut down to make room for farmland. Or maybe it was the dinosaurs that ate them. I was unplugged from the rhythm and I didn't have a clue where it was anymore. North Dakota had no soul, and now it was stealing mine. Like Moses, I prayed for a sign. I wasn't asking for a burning bush, mind you, just one human being or a living tree. That's when I saw it, a sign, a billboard. Welcome to Miles City. Experience the Old West at the Hole in the Wall, famous for prime rib and authentic atmosphere. I had to drink at the Hole in the Wall. How many opportunities do you get to experience history? I imagine sauntering up to the old swinging doors with cowboy boots on and attached spurs clicking on the sawdust-covered wood floor, pushing those weather-beaten doors open with both hands covered in leather and fringe hanging from the wrists as the air cracked behind me. I would cautiously pause before releasing the saloon doors and look around to see if there was anyone in there that might be gunning for me. My black, road-dusty cowboy hat would be pulled just far enough over my eyes so the suspicious patrons couldn't quite make out where I was really looking. I was in rocket mode. Jesus, come on, we have to stop. I have to stop there. If I don't, I won't be able to go on for one more minute. Please, this is really important to me. We have to stop. I'm going fucking crazy. There's nothing to look at. I'm going nuts. Do you hear me? I'm going blank like the world around me. What do you say? I had the band convinced that this was the place to have dinner and the town to spend the night. There were plenty of motels in town. They agreed. I had snapped back to my usual persuasive bandleader self. Nina looked depressed. The Hole in the Wall was better than I expected. It was a Western-style saloon with a bar that covered one entire wall. Intricate designs were carved in the bar's dark mahogany wood, and columns on each side rose from the floor all the way up to the ceiling. It was kind of like Roman cowboy architecture. Of course, in the middle of all that was an all-encompassing mirror. I never understood mirrors in bars. What could be worse than watching yourself get drunk? I remember seeing myself once on videotape eating potato chips, and I haven't eaten a chip since. I looked like a hog, shoving one chip after another into my face, not willing to wait for the chip that was already in my mouth to be swallowed before I shoved a new fresh chip in. I drank just like that. Maybe mirrors were from the old days when a cowboy needed to see what was going on behind him, the ancestor of the rearview mirror. The guy behind the original wood monstrosity disguised as a bar was the saloon keeper, Maverick. Honest, that was his name, Maverick. I was way too tempted, so I just had to ask, are you named after the horse, car, or a personality characteristic? I'm not usually a smartass without some liquid fortitude, and that afternoon I was dead sober, but God knows I was edgy. Maverick just smiled. He didn't give a shit how big of a smartass I was. Marty adored cowboy stuff. Vinny was totally put out. Lenny liked anything different than what he was used to. Sam loved everything. The guys sat at the bar. They became very friendly with Maverick. He was buying, they were drinking. Even Vinny dropped his scowl once in a while to make room for a laugh. We women sat at a long square table. All of us were going through our pockets, wallets, and purses for quarters, because fastened to the wall next to each table was a small jukebox, the silver kind with shiny metal tabs hanging out of the bottom, which were attached to a list of oldies protected by arched glass. The words, 2 plays for a quarter, were written on a little red mouth, open and hungry for quarters. Those records were begging to be played. Hank Williams, Patsy Cline, Mel Tillis, Elvis Presley, Connie Francis, Brenda Lee, Tammy Wynette, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and George Jones. I wanted to hear every single song, the B-sides too. Sometimes those were the best, the real finds. That evening was one of the magical times. We were the only customers there, so we had the run of the place. When we weren't chewing dinner, each woman was singing along to the tunes falling out of the mothership jukebox, standing by itself on the other side of the room. She was the keeper of the records. We sang 5-part harmony on I Fall to Pieces. Oh, man, that was what heaven must be like, standing on a sawdust floor, singing country classics with women I love. If I was dreaming, thank God no one woke me up. Maverick loved us. He hadn't seen anything like our menagerie in a long time, if ever. His curly hair was all one length and pushed back. When our new best friend would bend over to pour a drink, his hair would all come falling forward. Like when I would take a gulp out of a tall glass, and as I would near the end of my drink, slurping up every drop of liquor, crash, the ice that was at the bottom of the glass would be sitting on my face. Maverick was a Montana boy. Not fat, but predisposed to chubby. His face was oval with some extra plump to fill it out. His body was soft, making him resemble a cowboy Pillsbury doughboy. And the doughboy had a fabulous smile with dimples all over his plump face, which each woman couldn't help taking turns sticking a finger into. We kept waiting for him to giggle, like in the commercial. Maverick had a t-shirt on, which he had bought in Key West. His chubby chest displayed it proudly. All you need in this life is a tremendous sex drive and a great ego. Brains don't mean shit. It was signed Captain Tony. We closed down the bar only after we had sung every country western, soulful blues, rocking tune living inside that damn jukebox. None of us wanted the night to end, but we all needed sleep. Maverick had already taken care of the reservations. We were spending the night at the 600 Motel. It felt good to be in a farming and ranching town. Maverick said the population was fewer than 10,000. The area used to be Crow and Cheyenne country, though I didn't see any Indians. All of us felt sad about saying goodbye to Maverick because we had seriously connected. I hate road goodbyes, meeting up with people who you want to know more about, connecting just a little, and then it's time to leave. I know goodbyes are a part of the road thing, but I still don't know how to do see you later without feeling bad. I don't know. Goodbyes have always seemed awkward to me. Well, I was going to try to know him a little longer and give it one last squeeze. Maverick, would you like to join us for breakfast tomorrow morning? I could tell he wanted to. Man, I would love to. But I'm taking an early flight out in the morning to Los Angeles. I am way overdue for a vacation, but thanks for the offer. Oh, what the hell, a temporary friend. My life was full of them, and I guess the road was a good place for me to find out that most relationships in life were not meant to be long-term. I just had to learn to appreciate the good ones when they came drifting by. It was late Tuesday morning, and we had all overslept. I thought it was best that we skipped breakfast and ate on the open highway. Chrissy was upset with my decision. She hadn't missed many meals.
It's hard on me going all that way with no food. With no food. I go nuts if I don't eat every couple of hours.
I know Chrissy's complaining bothered Paula. It wasn't the constant bitching that got to her, because Chrissy ran her mouth off all the time. It was the audacity of Chrissy to actually complain first thing in the morning when all she was doing was riding in a car. Once again, Chrissy's thinking wasn't based in logic. If she thought about it, it was right. Paula's brain was trying not to say anything, but her mouth won.
What the fuck are you talking about? You have enough food in that purse to kill a fucking cow. It's time someone told you that gravy is not a fucking beverage. Jesus. Next thing you know, you'll be standing in front of a microwave screaming, hurry!
I could see Chrissy's feelings were hurt. Paula knew she had gone too far. After Paula got done with her, I didn't want to get into it with Chrissy about breakfast. She didn't need me coming in to pick her bones clean after Paula ripped her apart. And on top of it, food was important to me too. My argument wouldn't be all that convincing. I pulled out my nurturing mother voice. Listen, we have to get on the road. So you just let us know when we should pull over. That won't be a problem. How does that sound? Chrissy had her head down. She was looking for something in her purse.
Okay, yeah, that sounds okay.
Chrissy reminded me of an archaeologist the way she was digging in that purse of hers. I couldn't imagine what she was looking for. She finally found the buried treasure under weeks of accumulated artifacts. There, wrapped in the remaining silver paper casing, was a Kit Kat. AC must have given it to her, or she stole it. Chrissy carefully unwrapped the chocolate, brought it up to her mouth, and began to chew. Paula couldn't stand the visual. She spun around like a wired top and headed towards the van. I was glad Chrissy had given up the fight so easy, knowing I hadn't missed many meals myself. I have forgotten my name, my address, my phone number, and how old I am, but I have never once forgotten to eat. The rest of us and Chrissy always surprised me, because no matter what transpired between us and her, they would in an instant be forgiving. It was a silent apology made through little kindnesses that we would start doing for one another after a spat. For example, AC would let Chrissy smoke in her truck, or maybe Chrissy would volunteer to wrap Paula's hair. We loved each other and adored each other's singing. After the breakfast crisis, we could get on the road. The van sometimes reminded me of a beauty parlor on wheels. It was a long way to Butte. There were times when we would hit a long stretch with no planned stops, a good excuse to pull out the beauty supplies. Focusing on our beauty needs was a great way to kill time, and we started. Tweezers plucking, files sawing, clippers cutting, creams rubbing, perfumes spraying, brushes untangling, polish coloring, pencils lining, makeup smattering. There was no end to it. Once we moved into parlor frenzy, nobody had any ownership of his or her own beauty supplies. I was with the Queens of Makeup Club, Paula, Lucy, Chrissy, and Nina. I was proud to be a member. We knew, just like the gossip, that both were as necessary as breathing. The only time that our lips were still is when we were smearing something on them. And speaking of gossip, there was a pact between us. If you weren't in the vicinity when the gossip was going on, you were fair game. The four of us were absolutely clear on how somebody else should run their lives. We were currently analyzing AC. Paula started it because what I would do for a good joke, Paula had the same passion for a good gossip.
Girlfriends, I feel so bad for AC because she thinks being in charge is where it's at. If she controls it enough and gets busy enough, she just knows the situation will be just fine. I'm telling you what, that is why her food thing is so crazy. It's the one thing she has absolute control over.
I had to agree. Yeah, I know. She just doesn't know. The more you try to control it, the more out of control it becomes. You'd think she'd fucking get it by now. Lucy had her own take on the matter.
I don't care why she fucking does it, honey. She's too fucking bossy. She thinks everything should be her way. Ooh, honey, I hate being around her when she's like that.
Paula was putting the balance back into the gossip. She didn't want to get too mean.
Maybe she isn't that bad. Girlfriend is just trying to get a grip on life, that's all. It's so out of control at home. Poor thing. Her heart is in the right place.
I don't know if I agreed with that. I thought the abuse she suffered at home made her desperate, which put her heart in the wrong place. I kept my mouth shut on that one. Lucy could have cared less.
Well, then she should move out, honey. Fuck them.
Nina had a one-track mind.
She needs to get laid, That would chill her out.
In this case, I'm sure Nina was right. I found it interesting that what we thought of others seemed to be what our issues were. How else could you recognize them in someone else? Lucy was always in the fuck it mode. Paula was compassionate with a hint of mischief. Nina believed that sex was the common denominator in every faction of life. Chrissy had her head up her own ass and never knew what was going on in someone else's life. And me, I was the philosopher, trying to figure it all out. We didn't really care much what each other had to say because we were in the gossip groove. The women bonding on the road with makeup and gossip was special. Again, we knew it was a lifestyle that many didn't get to experience. No siree, we were unique. We lived the life of gypsies with no rules and no time limits. Give us too many rules, and we would show you we were off and running again. Me personally, I didn't have a husband or any children. I didn't own much, and I was the leader of the band. And there weren't any bosses around telling me what to do. My mother and father were dead. Hell, I didn't listen to them when they were alive. I had to carve out my own beat, find the rhythms that resonated. Life had to be mine alone to discover and then to live. I guess the instability of my early life had served a constructive purpose. It stirred in me a need for a more tangible family, one of my own choosing, an adopted bosom where I could safely rest my weary head. I could hear Lucy in the background of my thoughts.
AC sure has been wired tight, honey. You know, Lena, honey, her leaving had nothing to do with you. AC is pregnant and, honey, not by someone she knows very well. So I think you were getting some of the blame for that.
I couldn't believe it. Get the fuck out of here. Why didn't somebody tell me? Now that's great gossip.
Well, honey, she told me not to say anything, and being that she's gone, well, I thought it would be all right if I said something.
AC was intensely private, and I'm sure she would shit if she knew Lucy was telling us. Lucy knew it too, but she was way past caring because she was on her 4th beer. She drank just enough alcohol to loosen them big, red, greasy, gossiping lips. Paula was ecstatic with the great new gossip.
Oh my God, what is she going to do, girlfriend? Is she going to keep it?
Lucy was beginning to realize what she had done. She was trying to change the subject.
Oh, I don't know, honey. How far till Butte?
I had to chase the rat down the hole. Sorry, you're not getting off that easy. I thought she couldn't get pregnant because of being so sick.
Honey, you better not breathe a word of this to anybody or my ass is fucking grass.
I promise.
Well, honey, she is talking about keeping the baby because she feels it's a miracle.
Girlfriend, that sounds like a miracle from hell. Nina was unusually quiet. I knew she was thinking about when the same thing happened to her, and this conversation was causing her to be very uncomfortable. As we continued to move down the road, 2 thoughts came to me. I hadn't started my period yet. I knew my drinking wasn't that out of control, so fuck AC. If there were any doubts about whether Butte is a mining town or not, here is a list of just some of the attractions you can find here. World Museum of Mining, Mineral Museum, Copper King Mansion, Anselmo Mine Yard, Granite Mountain Mine Memorial, Berkeley Pit Viewing Stand. We pulled into Butte about 5 o'clock. We would have dinner, poke around for an hour, and continue on to Spokane, spending the night in our home state. Nina, in all her infinite help, had miscalculated the mileage, but it was better not to say anything. I took the blame. Butte sits at the foot of the west side of the Rocky Mountains. The mountains form a partial gray shield for the town. I-90 drops down into a valley where in the middle sits the face of Montana's mining capital with big open sores. The town was part of the 1860s gold rush. The surrounding hills were home of gold, silver, copper, and zinc. After 100 years, the mining still goes on, but now the drilling is no longer underground, being that the mode of operation is open-air mining. I guess they just wanted to make sure to get it all. There's no reason to leave any precious metals. I thought about the Aborigines and their respect for land. They believe that the less they take from the earth, the less they have to give in return. They don't needlessly slaughter animals or humans or strip Mother Earth of her precious metals. And then, when it comes time to thank the earth for her gifts, they slit a vein in their forearm and let their own blood splatter the ground. If the residents of Butte practiced this ritual, they would all be dead. Chrissy was weak with hunger and wanted to go into town right away for lunch, but the rest of us wanted to drive just a bit further because we were starving and looking forward to eating at Maddie's. Other musicians coming through the area had recommended the drive-in, so most of us had heard about Montana's first drive-in burger joint. We drove in and stared from our vehicles. Lucy screamed,
Car hops!
Jesus Christ, you scared the fucking shit out of me. But I couldn't stay mad because I was as excited as she was. The place had been there for 50 years and operated by the original owner, Maddie. She was 84 and continued with some help to make her own patties, hand-dipped shakes, and hand-cut fries. I don't know what it is about a drive-in, but whether it's the kind where you see a B-movie or the kind where you eat, I'm not able to stop the flood of memories that come rushing forward, like Maverick's hair. I wondered if everyone got that homesick feeling in his or her gut. I looked around. We were all excited. I believe they all felt the same as me. In Detroit, everything I did was based around my car. I bought a tank disguised as a 1961 Ford Galaxy when I was 15. The green monstrosity sat in front of my house for 6 months until I got my driver's license. He sat there with his 3-speed stick shift on the column, talking in a language only a Detroit girl could understand. Just you wait, Lena, 'cause I will show you what freedom is. I'll show you what it feels like to go where you want, when you want, with whomever you want. When I finally did get my license, it would be typical to pile all 5 of my best girlfriends into the car, Barb, Joanne, Peggy, Terry, and Vicky, and cruise up and down Telegraph or Woodward Avenue, meeting guys on Friday and Saturday nights. Part of the teenage ritual was going to Big Boys and ordering the food from the mini-skirted car hops. The Hammy Sammies were my favorite. Later, the name of the sandwich was changed to Slim Jim. I suppose it had a healthier sound to it. On special weekends, we drove up to Ann Arbor and partied with the radical political group, the White Panthers. All of this was part of my culture. You went to the drive-in on a date, and then maybe you parked in some secluded spot to have sex. Those damn Fords and Chevys were our homes away from home. No wonder I felt at home in the van. The menu was written on a big wooden board above our heads, slanted toward us so we could read it more clearly. I was getting the burger basket special and a chocolate hand-dipped shake. Oh man, I couldn't wait. I pressed the button on the silver speaker next to the driver's window. The little metal speakers were patiently waiting to soak up the sound of our food orders. Have you decided what you want? I was breathless. You bet I had. I would like a burger basket special. Lucy was yelling from the back seat.
Make that too, honey.
Paula ordered more sensibly.
I would like a fish sandwich without anything on it.
Nina was still deciding. I was getting impatient. I wanted to see the car hops. What did they look like? Did they still wear uniforms? God, wouldn't you die if they were on roller skates? Nina had finally decided.
I'll have a cheeseburger.
Then Chrissy.
Me too.
The voice without a face repeated the order back to us in a I've done this 100 times already this week voice. Let's see, that was 2 burger basket specials, fish sandwich with nothing on it, and 2 cheeseburgers. I answered quickly, yeah, that's it. She droned once more, probably thinking, Jesus, do I have to remind everyone that they want something to drink? Would you like anything to drink? I was embarrassed. I should have known better. Oh, sorry, yeah, we do. 2 chocolate hand-dipped shakes, 1 Diet Pop, and a glass of water. The faceless voice closed the deal. The car hop will bring you your order out to you. Oh man, this was too good. Lenny and the boys were parked next to us. It looked like they were enjoying themselves. I watched Lenny dressed in black, ordering food with a hair rag tied around his head, looking serious about the order. Honey, let me out. My fucking eyes are floating. Once again, Lucy was the first one out the door. She had the right idea. When we finished ordering, it was time to stretch and do the bathroom thing. While everyone stretched, I wandered off by myself and allowed myself to think about Bo. Spokane wasn't far away, and I kept torturing my heart with threats of calling him once we were over the state line. I missed him so much. The day was Tuesday, so I hadn't seen him for over a week. The last few years, I had felt like a wandering cloud with a suitcase that I called home. I had craved the lifestyle then, but now, caring about Bo made it all seem so empty. I cruised back towards the van. As I got in, my train of thought was interrupted by the vision headed towards the van. It was more than I'd hoped for. The car hop had on a uniform made up of a short white skirt, white t-shirt, and a white hat sitting on top of her head like a waitress crown. Lucy was getting pretty jazzed.
Oh, Lena, honey, look. She has one of those silver trays with her.
Lena was dead right. Our personal car hop was balancing with one arm the entire food order on a silver tray, and sticking out from underneath were small rubber clamps. She set the tray down on my window. I had forgotten how the window needed to be rolled up a bit so the tray could hang properly. The grips grabbed on with their stiff little rubber hands. We could depend on those little hands. Yes, sir, they wouldn't let go for the world because it was their job to hold on till we were done eating. I handed the orders out, calling with what was left of my old waitress ways. Let's see, what have we got here? A burger basket special. Lucy was hungry. She was not going to wait her turn.
That's mine, honey.
I was just getting started. Cheeseburger. Mine. Me too. Fish sandwich. That would be Paula's.
Thank you.
I called out and dispersed the fluids. The van had grown quiet except for the crinkling of the flimsy wax-like paper, which the burgers were wrapped in. They were like little hamburger envelopes, and the fries were spilling out of their half-mooned paper containers. The shake receptacles pleasantly heavier than a cup should be. Our car hop said to ring the buzzer if we needed anything. As she twirled on her heel, the short cheerleader-style skirt flared and we caught some upper thigh. We chewed and slurped our way into experiencing Butte, Montana heaven. The sign said, when you're finished, just beep. We were stunned from the combination car hop, burger, and drive-in experience. All we could do was smile and nod. With our newfound innocence, we drove straight through. By midnight, we would be in Spokane. The food weighed heavy along with my memories of the recent days, adding to the unfamiliar territory and the ache in my heart. How could the things that made you feel so good make you feel so bad? The rhythm was heavy and the scenery dense. Life's parts all came together, making sense. But then again, if you paid attention, it always did. Synchronicity. What you felt is what you saw. What you saw became what you felt. I liked only one kind of feeling. It was when my adrenaline was pumping overtime. If I didn't sing, I probably would have gone into the daredevil business, just like Chrissy's new boyfriend, Roger. I could hear it now. No, I'm sorry. That is not a big enough cannon for me. What are you kidding? I'm talking thrills. This cannon will only shoot me 50 feet. I'm thinking more like 200. Then it would be worth my time. Like Chrissy, I knew the two safest places I could be were at the top of the emotional meter or at the bottom. In the middle, where the true information lives, was to be avoided at all costs. The truth was too honest and too painful. I was stuck in the act of spoiling the soul and shrinking the spirit. Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans, and I had no intention of living life any other way than the way I was. With the success of the show, meeting Bo, and my increasing blackouts, I didn't have a fucking chance of staying where I was.